The greatest acts of prostitution are not in the back alleys of cities. Hardly. They're these subtle ones I'm about to describe. And I know this because after doing, thousands of readings, I realized how many people were filled with self-loathing because they couldn't protect themselves, their power, in the way that they wanted to protect their power when they felt victimized. Hi everybody, time for another archetype video. There's so many to choose from. I decided to do the prostitute today, this week, because it's one, I think it's such, I find an intriguing, I consider it one of the 4 survival archetypes, if you know my work. There's the child, the victim, the saboteur, and the prostitute. And I call them the 4 survival archetypes because what they symbolize in our psychic field and what they symbolize in our psyche and all that they represent, these 4 come together in a way that converts to the challenges we face as we develop self-esteem. Each one of these archetypes in its own way embodies challenges that are universal to all of us. All of us have an inner child, and the part of the journey of the child is for us to keep that child alive while not letting the child control our adulthood, while not letting the wounded child control our adulthood, or the invisible child, or an overly demanding, spoiled child. I mean, and yet we still need the innocence of the child in so many ways to really enjoy life. I did the victim. I think that was one of the earlier archetypes that I did. But I will say this, that in life, we are forever confronting situations, relationships, events in which we have to ask ourselves, well, do I feel victimized by this? Or do I have the power, resources to be victorious, to not feel victimized? Again and again, if you look through the lens of archetypes, one of the reasons I love this subject so much is that it takes us out of the actual event and into the realm of power and symbolism and into ourselves and how we relate from the inside out to every single moment that we're in our lives. Which brings me to the subject of power. And I've taught this, and I will always teach this, that power is the fundamental ingredient of the human experience. Everything you do, everything you think, everything you say, everything you eat, everything you wear, absolutely everything, the car you drive, where you sit in a theater, everything is a power negotiation. The language you choose to use with someone, how you hear things, you interpret as to whether or not it has empowered you or disempowered you. There isn't a thing, oh my God, I'm telling you. Years ago, United Airlines doesn't do this anymore, thank you God. But they used to have this thing called red carpet, the red carpet. And I really felt for those employees who had to go through this every time. So when it was time to board the plane, they would roll out this rag of a red carpet. It was plastic and rubber and whatever. But they'd put it out. It's just a rag of just like a runner. but it was the red carpet. And so you got to stand on that if you were going first class. And inevitably, I thought, here it comes. And you'd watch all these people line up real fast because that meant something to them. Everything is a power negotiation. Absolutely everything. Even standing on a dirty red rug. I mean, and I always think like a Buddhist, that everything's an illusion. This is a dirty rug, and this is what you need to feel important. Wow. So if you stood on this side of the rail of the aisle, you wouldn't feel as important as you do standing on a dirty red rug. Now imagine if they had just cleaned the carpets, and all the carpets were actually fresh and clean, but this dirty red runner was what they wanted to stand on because it represented that they would go on first. Yeah, okay? So power is the fundamental ingredient. Look at how many cases of road rage, right? Someone is driving and all of a sudden they cut you off and you're like, oh, well, that does it. And the lights are on, right? How easily we lose power. And so coming back to, if I can give you a jewel that you could keep forever in your pocket and pull out as a life compass, it's that everything is a negotiation of power. And whenever you're upset, whenever you're feeling off balance, whenever something's getting you angry or something, pull that out and say, this is it. The reason I'm responding this way viscerally, the reason I'm beginning to shake, quake, or whatever, the reason your vocabulary is shifting to aggressive language is because your power is threatened. It's because your power is threatened. And I think this is a lens through which you can, it offers you the opportunity to think about what you are about to say or do, or reshape your thinking instantly, because it's costing you power. Now, I call these 4 archetypes: the prostitute, saboteur, and I think I did the saboteur, the victim, the child, survival, because they represent the lessons and challenges on the obstacle course of developing self-esteem. We all have to deal with, how will I survive here? What can I do? How will I survive my life? How will I survive in the physical world? This is a fundamental question. How will we survive? So survival is a major force, which brings up the fact that the child in us may well be terrified of the outside world. The saboteur in us is something we have to confront, because in order to survive, we have to take risks. We have to constantly make choices that empower us or they disempower us. We are always on this obstacle course of seeking opportunities or trying to figure out ways to survive. Which brings me to the prostitute. Now, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves when it comes to survival is, through what means will I survive? What do I have to bring to the world as my talents, my skills, what can I convert into survival currency? Do I have a singing voice? Am I a musician? Am I talented? What are my talents? I have to take these things inside of me and convert them into survival currency. Maybe it means I have to get a music education. I have to do this. Am I a writer? Well, that means I have to throw words in my head. I have to learn how to construct sentences. We have to become survival capable. And it also means that, no, that's not what I mean. I want to say it this way. Survival currency is how we use our power. It's what will we do with our power? Now, listing talents is the obvious. You know, you go to school, you learn to be an accountant, or you learn to be this, or you learn to be a great carpenter. You learn some kind of skill that that you can then sell on the marketplace. And we don't call that prostitute. We don't. The issue of prostitute comes up when we are not sure what we can sell. So we start bargaining with our power, the most precious thing we have, our own life force. The greatest acts of prostitution are not in the back alleys of cities. Hardly. They're these subtle ones I'm about to describe. And I know this because after doing, thousands of readings, I realized how many people were filled with self-loathing because they couldn't protect themselves, their power, in the way that they wanted to protect their power when they felt victimized. So they negotiate. So what do you negotiate? What is an act of subtle, energetic prostitution? Well, when you sell a part of your energetic nature, a part of your energy to another person, to a situation, to a political party, to a gang, to some outside circumstance, situation, person, in exchange for safety, for a roof over your head, in exchange for a salary, in exchange for something. When you don't I cannot tell you how many times I've been in the company of couples where it was obvious to me, they couldn't stand each other. They absolutely couldn't stand each other. And I would think to myself, what are you doing with, I can't, it is incomprehensible to me. It is really incomprehensible to me to exist in the same atmosphere with someone who couldn't stand me, or I felt that way. And inevitably, I was told, well, it's the economics. They're so tied together economically. Well, that's when you begin to negotiate your health. You'll put your health on the line. You'll put your sense of self on the line. You'll put your emotional well-being on the line. You start telling yourself narratives that aren't true in order for you to sustain yourself in a situation. These are inner acts of prostitution. There's this story in the scripture, I think it's one in the New Testament, that I think is one of the most powerful stories. And it's when Jesus went into the desert for 40 days. And he was confronted by Satan, who said to him, I want all your power. And in exchange, I will give you all the power of the earth. Now, these stories in the scripture are not stories about Jesus. They're stories about what will happen to us inevitably. That the more inner power we have, the more we have to sell to the world. And so inevitably, some dark force will come knocking at our door. That's what these stories are about. That's why I love them so much. The life of Jesus, or the life of Buddha, the life of these holy beings, they didn't come down here so that we could just look at their lives they lived their life on behalf of our lives, to say this is, as you develop your interior self, these are the challenges that will inevitably come to you. And here's a small example of that. I frequently refer to alcoholics, alcoholism, etc., because I come from a history of that. And also because, as many of you who know me know, I lost my brother to alcoholism. And he went through a few treatment programs. But he was never more vulnerable than when he got out of a treatment program, because that's when he thought he didn't need the support of AA. That's when he thought he was clear, when in fact he was at his most vulnerable. His most vulnerable was just as he had a taste of empowerment, of just the beginnings of self-esteem. He caved and thought, I can walk into a bar and I'll be fine. Well, he wasn't fine. He died of alcoholism. This is what we all face in life when, for example, when we're frightened. What will we sell? Well, I look at the Senate. I look at the Congress. I look at what Kevin McCarthy has done. He has sold his soul so that he could be Speaker of the House. I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. Anybody who pulls a stunt like that is someone who's worth putting a spotlight on as an example of how never to live. But his fear of not having what he wants in the physical world is so enormous that he has sold every single part of himself that he requires to be a good and effective leader. He has sold everything. That is a prostitute right there. That is the classic. You'll never see him in a back alley, but that's it. When you negotiate your power and you sell it on behalf of something in this physical world, you have to understand you are actually selling your power. Like agreeing to work for a company where I look at how many people have cleared out of Fox News and they finally come out and say, I couldn't work there anymore because I just don't believe a thing they say. I just don't believe the way they live. They're just liars. They put all this but they finally broke from, I don't care how much they're paying me. I don't care. I need my dignity. I need my power more than I need that paycheck. These small acts of prostitution are everyday occurrences in our lives. Small, tiny acts, the way which someone will sell their agreements, and they'll become very agreeable, not because they agree, but because it's safer. It's safer not to speak up. It's safer. Anytime you use the excuse for not speaking up as safety, you're into this archetype. Make no mistake. I just want to avoid conflict. I just want to keep my head down, right? And what you're doing is you're hemorrhaging your power. And here's something. Actually, the more I think about this, the more I want to say about it. When we sell our power for safety, we don't actually ever get safety. We never do. We never get what we think. What happens is, what's the best analogy I can give you? All right, let's imagine your power is money, and we get $100 a day. Okay, that's our budget. And with that $100, we get to invest that 100 in anything we want in our lives. We could invest it in our creativity. We could invest it in our own inner ideas. We could invest any which way we want. And how we invest has to pay dividends. Because if you invest in your creativity, for example, you're going to get dividends back. Even if, for example, you decide, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to become an artist, or I'm going to go and follow my gut instincts, I'm supposed to become a great carpenter, whatever it is. Even if it doesn't pay off physically immediately, the dividends that come from following your inner self cannot be measured. They just pour in. They just pour in. And you find yourself saying, I'll figure out a way to deal with this. I'll work another job, but I've got to stay doing this because I know I'm supposed to. So I'll do whatever I'll do this, I'll do that, but I'm supposed to do this. I'm not compromising my whole self. So I'll just do what I have to do in order for this to happen. But I'm not going to not do this because I'm afraid that I won't survive. Now, when we make choices that come out of fear of survival, when we, for example, keep jobs that we're terrified, that we can't stand those people, or we don't like what they represent, or when we don't speak up, when political systems are full of liars, and we just go along with the lie because, we've got to stick with the crowd. What will happen? We'll lose our job. We'll lose our constituency. We'll lose everything. You are abdicating your power, and you're literally creating a hemorrhage, and you're actually hemorrhaging to that magnetic field. You're actually hemorrhaging. And while you may think at the outset that that makes you safer, because that's what it looks like in Buddha language, it's an illusion. In fact, the more you hemorrhage, the more insecure you get, the more frightened you get, the more paranoid you get, because you are draining your capacity to access your own inner survival mechanism. Because you've betrayed yourself, you don't trust yourself. Because you don't trust yourself, you don't trust any guidance coming through, and so on and so forth. And so you keep selling more of your energy to get in even deeper with that illusion that they will take care of you, because you feel ever more fragile. And then self-hate starts, self-loathing starts. And in order to deal with that, you have to find outside targets to loathe. Because that's what these groups do. Look at how hateful so many of those groups are that come together like this. Where you have the Proud Boys, these groups of fundamentally weak human beings that have no power in the outside world, but their power comes by abdicating it to what they think is a cause. And yet once they're isolated, they're powerless. But they've prostituted themselves to that. And they've lost their capacity to reboot themselves, to break away, and to become self-sustaining energetically. Now, these challenges, come our way all the time. Like, what will we have to exchange? Because we all need survival currency. To that, I would tell you, nothing is more important than you protecting your soul, than you protecting your power, than you not abdicating your power to anything, to anyone, don't give your word if you don't mean it. Don't agree with something if you don't, but because you just need to stay safe in the group. Watch what you're doing, because those are acts of prostitution. And if you think that those actions pay dividends, you are gravely mistaken. Abdicating power to another person because you want acceptance, because you want to be in, you think that you're going to feel better, but I'll tell you, you feel more insecure. You feel you're going to need to do it again in some way, to constantly need reinforcement because you are draining your power. You're not being empowered by your actions. Your choices and actions in your life should empower you. They should pay energetic dividends. They should not hemorrhage you. And that's why, honestly, if I were to do another book on the causes of illness and stress, it would be at this microcosmic level of acts of personal betrayal and the price we pay for that, acts of prostitution, the capacity not to protect our power. What happens when we sell our power on the streets for safety, for prestige, for political gain, for financial gain, for whatever reason? If you sell your power, it won't pay a dividend. You invest your power. You invest it in yourself. You invest it in something positive. You invest it in your creativity. You invest it in anything that pays energetic dividends. Obviously, I could go on and on and on, but I'm just touching the surface of these archetypes. And I do apologize to you for that, because each one is worthy of a whole seminar. And I realize that. So I apologize to you for that, but I hope there's at least a jewel of wisdom in each one of these little videos that I'm doing that you can, that will help you live a more empowered and healthy and blessed life. Thank you so much.